All right, so I think we're going to get started. We're a tight timeline. We've got two great plenaries back to back. So my name is Tegan Turner. I'm a PGY3 here in Manitoba in the 5-year program, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. So I want to thank you guys, first of all, for joining us for this morning's plenary session at 11 a.m. When work feels like death by 1,000 paper cuts, strategies for recovery. This topic is of critical importance to us working in emergency medicine. It certainly relates to mental health and emotional well-being like that of burnout, but can present quite differently, and we're going to hear more about that today from today's expert, Dr. Sarah Gray. By way of introduction, Dr. Gray is both an emergency medicine and critical care physician working at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. Her academic interests include optimizing resuscitation performance, knowledge translation of best practices, and cardiac arrest. She's also an ICF certified professional coach and works with clients around leadership, career transitions, and well-being. As we get ready for her talk, there are a couple of quick housekeeping items. Please keep your phone on silent, and a reminder that there will be opportunities for questions in the last 10 minutes, and we invite you to come up to the mics on either side of the room. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Sarah Gray.
Thanks, Tegan. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for having me and inviting me to be here. We are going to talk about those days where sometimes work kind of sucks. Has everybody had a paper cut? Small, annoying, kind of bugs you for the day. And then you have those days where you get 5 of them, or 6 of them, or 10 of them, and they add up. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm an emerge doc and a coach from Toronto. I'm on the CAEP Wellness Executive, but I don't have any financial funding from pharma or industry or anything like that. And I want to start by checking the room to see if we're all on the same page. So I want a show of hands. How many people say in the past month at work have had that situation where you spend 20 minutes of your precious time looking for the ultrasound or the tono pen or the whatever, only to find it broken in some dusty corner? Okay. Who's had that situation where you personally are apologizing for a delay that is not your fault? Like a radiology time, a lab time, an admission time. Okay. Who personally has had that situation where you are sending somebody out, discharging somebody at 3 a.m. to an unsafe social situation, but you feel like you got to send them out? Right? These are our paper cuts. These are our daily injuries that hurt us. And what these are actually called are moral injuries. A moral injury is that pain we feel when we aren't able to deliver the awesome care we want to deliver. It's that tension between the system and doing what we think would be best. And so when you feel like you're in that rock and a hard place, that's what moral injury is. That place where you feel like you can't do what's right. And we don't talk about moral injury enough, I don't think. We talk about burnout a lot in emergency medicine, but actually these are quite separate things. Burnout is a syndrome of chronic overwork, where you feel cynical, dissatisfied, you feel fatigue. Not everybody has burnout, but almost all of us experience moral injury, and moral injury feeds into burnout. And the reason why it's important to understand the differences here is because we can't really look at solutions until we're clear on the specific problem we have. Because the solutions for burnout are not the same as those for moral injury. And there's a spoiler alert here, right? The solution to moral injury is to fix the system that's harming you. But we're going to come to that. So if these are things you're struggling with, you are not alone. The CMPA runs a well-being index now. I encourage you to fill it out if you haven't done it before. It tells you your personalized results against all the other physicians. This top row is 4,000 Canadian physicians that they've surveyed so far. 63% are distressed or struggling. So if you are distressed or struggling, you are not alone. You're in the vast majority. Emerge docs actually, surprisingly to me, aren't doing the worst. We're actually sort of average. Turns out the surgeons are doing much worse, but they're not willing to talk about it yet. So at least we're standing up and can have the conversation. But I think maybe we could do better than this, right? I don't like our percentage of distressed and struggling people. So we can work on our well-being. And when I think of well-being overall, sum total, it's pretty easy math. It's the sum of all of your recovery strategies. That's your health, that's your wellness, the things that bring you joy, the fun you have, the people you love, minus all of your paper cuts or injuries. The moral injuries we sustain on work, but also the things that happen at home. The divorce, the car crash, your house burns down. Well, that one's not a paper cut, that's like penetrating trauma, right? Those are bigger. But all of these things combine in our lives, and if we want overall well-being, and we can't control all of our paper cuts, then we need to aggressively work on the recovery side to stay well. And so if we're going to think or strategize around our own personal recovery, we need to know how we're doing first. So we're going to have a minute for self-awareness here to map how you are all doing onto the emergency department hierarchy of needs, which is, as you'll recognize, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we're going to map it onto the emergency department version of this. So who in the past month has stolen food off a patient's tray? Right? Nobody's willing to put their hand up, but I'm sure there are people in here. So don't put your hand up. We don't need to get that granular, right? Same, if you've done a shift without going to the bathroom, if you've done a shift without having a sip of water, you are in the physiologic basement where you're just working on surviving. I say this with absolutely no judgment. I've spent a lot of time in that zone. Like all 9 months of both of my pregnancies, solidly in the physiologic basement, just trying to hang on to get through the end of the day. No judgment. Maybe you're doing a little better than that. Maybe your primary concern in your last month of shifts was around safety. And that's both our physical safety, is that person gonna punch me? But more commonly, it's our psychological safety and how are we interacting with our colleagues. If you feel hunted when you're in the emergency department, this is your level. When people are on that level of belonging and love, this is when you're leaning into the team you have or finding the team you have, finding the people you can count on. This is where you're identifying your failure friends and leaning into them when you're having a bad day. This is where you recognize that you have a network of people and that you're not alone. Esteem and agency is the next level up. This is where you think, hey, I'm actually pretty good at my job. Maybe I can't control the 12-hour wait, but I got that airway and I feel okay about my day. And the people up at the top are the small minority who are truly thriving, who have energy to give. It's always hard for me to know what the emerge equivalent of this is. I think mostly these are the people who manage to finish their charts and get out of work on time, right? If that's you in the past month, maybe you're purple. And we all vary through all of these levels, right? We have all been in the basement. We might have all had moments at the top. Nobody stays in any of them forever. It's transient. So can we just room check? Who would identify as in the top half of this pyramid? It's a fairly benign way to structure it. Okay, who's in the bottom half? That leaves a lot of people sitting on their hands. That's fine, I can handle it. You mentally track where you are. But let's talk about how this intersects with moral injury. Because if you're in the physiologic basement, frankly, you don't need to worry about moral injury today. Just get a snack and go take a nap, and you come back to us when you're up a level, right? Moral injury intersects with how we're doing mostly in the top half of the pyramid. So if you have a lot of moral injury at work, you can start feeling like this is not a team you want to belong to, and it hurts us at that level of belonging and finding friends. It can hurt us at the esteem and agency level if you have enough moral injury that you start feeling like you are not good at your job, or like this is a job you don't want to be good at. But this top half of the level is also where we have the people who have the energy to give, the energy to help us start shifting the system towards something healthier. And that's what I want to focus on. What we're going to talk about mostly is solutions for how we can make this a little bit better. So I want to give you 3 strategies we can talk about for while you're on shift, things you can do when your day feels like you're drowning in moral injury, and then we're going to talk about broader system solutions also. While we're on shift, I want to start with the concept of microaggressions. I think this is something we're all familiar with. A microaggression is a small, tiny phrase that's hurtful. Maybe it's sexist, maybe it's racist, maybe it's rude, maybe it's insulting in some other way. And they're not obvious, like this image of this guy who's maybe frankly aggressive, not microaggressive. A microaggression can almost come across like a joke. It happens when patients identify female doctors as nurses. It happens if you're a doctor and your patient says, "Oh, aren't you too young to be a doctor?" Which is kind of an awesome compliment and kind of invalidating at the same time. And these small moments in our day, sometimes they're so small that we don't address them, that we don't say anything back, we don't want to make waves, we don't want to cause issues. But if they accumulate, particularly for people who have intersectionality, they can start to become that snowball that becomes the avalanche. Each one of them is a tiny moral injury. And the solution here is to actually stand up and micro-affirm in response. Say the thing back. When we hold our boundary, when we stand up for what is right, that's where we start healing from moral injury. And so that act of saying something for yourself or for someone else is where we start to heal. And the hard part with this for me, I am one of the people who thinks of the perfect thing to say about 4 hours later. In the heat of the moment, I'm like, I got nothing, that was terrible. And I'm on my drive home and I'm like, that's what I should say the next time. So over the years, you can actually take courses in microaffirming. You can have speakers come and talk about this. But I've learned a formula for what I'm going to say when this happens that I now use all the time. I root my responses in values because it's really hard to argue with a value, and I don't want to start a fight. And so when somebody says something that's racist or otherwise inappropriate, my response is to talk about the value. We value tolerance here. Your comments aren't appropriate. Or somebody's on the phone and they're raising their voice or they're yelling at me, and I'll say, hey, we value professionalism here. Let's take a breath and talk about this respectfully. You can say this professionally. You can say it neutral. You can say it kind, right? If you want to keep it professional, you don't want to say it with an eye roll and a kind of snarky tone, because then you get into a fight. And you want to avoid personal attacks. We're talking about the behavior, not about the person. But this is how we start reaffirming, making our place a better place to work. When someone says something dismissive to my nurses, I say, hey, we value the whole team here. Please don't speak to my nurse that way, or my trainee, or my fellow, or my colleague. Microaffirming is a valuable skill that we should all be rolling out daily. And on those shifts where you're still having a ton of moral injury, you need a team you can lean on. And so I encourage all of you to work on fostering that team when you're on shift. Spend 2 minutes really connecting with somebody. Because the stronger your network is, the more you are buffered against injury. We know when we are isolated and injured, it's worse. Recovery is worse. Burnout is higher. People are more likely to leave their job. Having that safety net is actually hugely valuable for our well-being in this job, and you need to foster it intentionally. Strong relationships don't come randomly. They come because we invest time and energy into them, and people put time and energy back into us. And the third thing I want you to think about on shift is for those moral injuries you can't control, because a whole bunch of them are out of our hands. I can't do anything about the lab turnaround time. I can't, okay, can I digress for a second? I'm going to digress for a second. I can't do anything about the radiology wait time. At my place, the radiology wait time kills me. It makes me bananas. I can't control it. And I used to take it home with me. So I would go home and I would be irate about the radiology wait time. And this is a significant problem for me because I'm married to a radiologist. I'm not lying. I would go home and we would fight at the dinner table like every night. And I'd be like, I can't believe it. And he'd be like, babe, I don't even work at your hospital. Like, but, you know, and so when you're taking this home and hurting your own marriage, then you need to think of some different strategies for letting it go. We got to learn to let go of the ones we can't control. And so a few years ago, I figured out this 3x3 transition, which is what I'm going to share with you now. At the end of your shift, you get a pen and a couple scraps of paper. Doesn't have to be a Post-it note, any random piece of paper will do. And on your first piece of paper, you write down the 3 things you want to let go of, the 3 negatives. Well, the radiology wait times, and the consultant who was rude, and that moment where I didn't show up as my best self. Whatever it is, you write them down. On the second Post-it note, you write down 3 positives. The diagnosis you made, or you got the art line, or you made that kid smile. Whatever it is, the tiny things. And then you take your piece of paper with the negatives, with the stuff you want to let go, and you crumple it up, and you throw it in the garbage. You literally and figuratively leave it behind. And you can throw it pretty hard, which I find therapeutic. I also have terrible aim, so I usually have to throw it a few times, which turns out is actually good. Like sometimes that's really helpful for me. And the one with the positives, that's the one you hang on to. That's the one you take home. That's the one you stick somewhere where you could see it. Okay, maybe don't put them on your windshield. It shouldn't be a driving hazard, I know. But when I started doing this in COVID early, and they were all over my car, I thought maybe there were fomites and I didn't want to take them into my house. And getting into the car, like I could see my week or my month reflected back at me, and I could feel like I was making a tiny difference in the world. I could see that maybe me showing up to work mattered, and I could go home with a focus on the positive rather than with a focus on the negative and show up as way more human for my family. And so when you're on shift, think about micro-affirming. Makes a massive difference in our moral injury when we start standing up for ourselves and others. You need your team to bolster you through that. And maybe you have a transition strategy for how you're going to go home a bit more human. And then I want to talk about the broader issues. The system fixes here for moral injury, and there are many, many of them. But I want to start with the basics. I want to start here. Who's going to change our system? Yeah, it's us. It's me, and it's you, and it's the person sitting next to you, and whoever else is at your table. Because I promise you, there is no team of other people sitting out there waiting to fix emergency medicine for us. And sometimes I'll hear people complain, and they're like, oh, they have to fix the system. And I'm like, who's they? Like, who are those magical unicorns who are going to come make that better? No, like, there is no they. And maybe, I don't know, like, it could be your chief. My chief, like, is phenomenal. I love him, but we pay him for what, like 8 hours a week? He can't fix it all. 60, I don't even know what we pay him, but there's no way he can fix the whole thing. He's just one guy. What we need is for everyone to lean in a tiny way. If everyone did a tiny bit of good over the next year, a year from now, you're in a slightly better place. And then you do it again and again, and you keep iterating until we've moved to where we want to be in this specialty. But it's not on somebody else. We've got to accept it's us. And we've got options. So I encourage you to think about what you want to lean into. I encourage and maybe even challenge all of you to think about what you want to lean into, where you could have impact. It could be tiny, it could be small. Maybe you're making a change in your locker room. That's fine. All those incremental changes add up, and you want to think about something that you are passionate about so you have that commitment to follow it through. But there are lots of things we can do at the level of our department. When we started working on wellness many years ago at my was put food in the fridge, just healthy snacks, so people didn't have to eat out of a vending machine at night. We gave people access to water, and in our office, there's a little like IKEA pull-out bed situation so that people on trauma call can have a nap, or if you've worked a night shift and you're not safe to drive home yet, you could sleep for a couple hours. This doesn't fix moral injury, but this helps the people in the physiologic basement, right? It helps our colleagues so they move up a level, and we all feel better about it. Scheduling flexibility is massive. The impact of your schedule on your sleep, your health, your longevity cannot be overstated. So if there's one area we should all be pushing on, it should be on this. Having flexible schedules that match your chronotype, that are short shifts reduce errors. It makes a real difference for how happy people are when they come to work, when they can recover by getting the rest they deserve. I believe, my own opinion, everybody should have a sabbatical program. We have one at my place. Nothing makes people happier than picking their sabbatical month for the following year. If you have questions about it, email me. I run our sabbatical program. I'll give you all our details. Equity is huge when it comes to reducing moral injury. When things are perceived to be unfair, injury increases. You want transparent pay. You want equitable pay. Everybody's got to understand how the money moves around in your department. You need policies in place to make sure the other important decisions are also equitable and transparent. How do you decide on medical leave, parental leave, vacation time? Equity is key here for reducing moral injury. And if you already have all this in your department, you can pat yourself on the back. That's pretty awesome. And then you can put some energy into a different level. Maybe you go up and you advocate at the hospital level. Maybe you need better admin support because you're sick of the paperwork. And they could help you with clerical stuff, admin, research, education on that background admin tasks. Maybe you start asking for the health infrastructure we should have in the building. Like, do you have a gym? Do you have access to healthy food 24/7? Do you have a breastfeeding space? Do you have sleep space? All the things that we need for basics of health. Are your physicians included in your employee assistance program? Many hospitals systematically exclude the physicians because they're not employees in some places. It's an easy win to advocate for. Maybe you push on flow, push on nursing ratios, push on consult times, time to bed, with enforceable outcomes. We know flow is a massive driver of moral injury in the emergency department, and many of those fixes are local. That needs us to lean in on the hospital level. If you want to go bigger, if, Blair and Al the other day talked about inside versus outside. If you want to do outside advocacy outside your institution, maybe you start pushing in your city for the things you believe in or for the things your community deserves. Maybe you leverage the media, write a letter to your editor, to your MP. Like, AI now will write the letter for you, find all the emails, and auto-send it through your email if you want. It's never been easier to do this piece. You could vote strategically for the people who stand up for the issues that matter for you, or if you can't find one of those people, you could just do it yourself. I do think an emerge doc would make an incredible prime minister. I'd vote for them. I don't know about you guys, but I think we'd kill it. Maybe that's too big. Maybe we've overshot. Maybe the easiest possible solution here is to join a national committee, because I'm going to give you an unapologetically shameless plug right now. You could join the CAEP Wellness Committee, who meets this afternoon in this building, where you need 0 credentials, and all you need is a tiny desire to make the world a little better for emerge docs. We do papers and scholarly work like this, and I highlight this article by Rod Lim for you just because it has a lot of inspiration and ideas here in what places across the country are doing to improve well-being. And it's a great lever for advocacy, because you can look at this paper and be like, oh, hey, I want that, and I see 62% of the other places have it. And I'm going to take that data to my leaders to say, hey, we're behind, we need to catch up. Using data like this is really valuable for helping people advocate for the changes they want. Because change is actually possible. I bet every single person in this room has advocated for a change at some time, somewhere, at your work or your life or your school. You have all been successfully able to advocate for change. You just have to decide you want to lean in. So when you're on shift, the easiest first strategy is just to stand up to those microaggressions, to politely, respectfully affirm. Lean on your team, foster those relationships that help keep us safer. Think about 3x3 transition. It's pretty fun just to throw that stuff in the garbage, I won't lie. But the real solution to moral injury is to stand up and advocate, to build the better system that we deserve. And it's true, we can't do it all, but I'll leave you with this. This is my favorite quote from Edward Hale, who said, "I am only one, but I am one. And I can't do everything, but I can do something. I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do." We need to change our system, and it doesn't start with other people, it starts with every single one of us. So pick something you're passionate about and help move the needle. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gray. That was phenomenal. While we wait for people to come up to the mics, I will start us off with a question. I noticed that you talked a little bit about failure friends, and I've heard you talk about that before, but I'm hoping you can explain for us what that means and what that looks like.
Okay, yeah, I definitely can. So this idea came to me about 10 years ago, when I started thinking about how in medicine, when you make a mistake, when you have a failure, when a case goes sideways, we don't talk about it. We often are systematically taught to keep quiet or to slide it under the rug. And that breeds this culture of shame, where people feel like they're the only person who's ever made a mistake, not one of all of us humans who are mortal creatures who make mistakes by definition. And I think I realized at that stage that I maybe didn't have the relationships I needed to be able to call somebody and be like, "I had this terrible case, I made a mistake, I need to talk about it." And when you don't have those people, when you're dealing with that in isolation, mental health outcomes are much worse, depression and anxiety go up, our suicide rates are unacceptable. And so the concept is you find a person who you can call on your worst day and have an actual, honest, vulnerable, brave conversation with them. You have to foster that intentionally. You don't randomly back end into one of these. You want to pick the person. Be smart about picking the person. You want somebody nice, somebody who won't gossip, somebody not judgmental, right? You want somebody who understands your context, where they can understand what really happened and how that impacted you. But then you can build that out around your life. So I have a failure friend for the emergency department. I have one for the ICU. I have 3 for parenting. I have one for menopause. It's like a whole thing. But then you have all your people. You have all your people. No microphone, but people. And it's super valuable. We should all have that. If you don't have that, you want to start identifying them and having those conversations.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, we have someone. Go ahead.
It's working. Thank you very much for the talk. I love the reality-based talks and the practicalities of it. I want to ask a question on behalf, I think, of the new generation coming in. And I apologize for the inevitable reference to the pit, but there was an intentionally divisive scene in the pit where a learner was walking out at the end of her shift when the department was in an obvious crisis situation. And a senior resident was saying, you know, how can you leave her in this situation? And she said, "Unlike you emerge docs, I understand that I have to build barriers to protect my mental health because you guys are all burnt out." And the scene was obviously couched to challenge both sides of that equation. And, you know, how do we all know that feeling of taking it all on. And how do we guide our learners and our incoming staff to negotiate that balance?
Yeah, so great question. I apologize, I haven't seen the scene. I'm behind on my pit watching, but I'll catch up, I promise. I think there is real tension there between meeting the needs of our patients and our colleagues and balancing that with our own health. And so I don't think there's a blanket solution for all scenarios. I do think it needs to be individualized. But I also believe that sometimes people are leaving at that moment because they are struggling, or they are distressed, or their house is burnt down, or whatever else is happening that I have no idea about. And I think we need to give them the grace and opportunity to say when they need to leave for their own safety. I can go to the other, thanks Brittany. I can go to this mic. But that's my answer, Fraser.
Excellent. I think that's actually all the time we have today, but any further questions? You already heard the plug, 4:45 today, the Wellness Committee meeting. One more time, thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Gray.
Thank you. Thank you.